not left click.
You're on.
Alright, today we're going to talk about Chapter 5. We're going to talk a little bit about conductors and their ampacity. Every conductor has an ampacity. Ampacity is how much current you can push through that conductor before it overheats. Okay? That's ampacity, current carrying capacity of a conductor. I believe it is one of your vocab words that you will need to become familiar with for the test. Okay, electrical conductors are bare, covered, or insulated. You will need to know the differences between all three. Bare, covered, and insulated. Which conductor do we see that's always bare?
Ground.
The ground, right? Ground in a residential system is usually green, or bare. Otherwise, it's what color? Green or green-yellow. Okay? Those are the three colors that a ground wire can be. Okay? What colors can an ungrounded conductor be? Or what colors can it not be?
Any colors besides green or white, gray, or green?
White, gray, or green, right? Any other color can be an ungrounded conductor. What's an ungrounded conductor called? What's just a layman's term?
Load wire.
Neutral?
No. Ungrounded. It's not your neutral, it's your hot wire, right? Hot wire is the layman's term for an ungrounded conductor. And a grounded conductor is your neutral, typically. Okay? So you have your ungrounded, which is a hot, grounded, which is a neutral, and ground, which is your grounded wire. Okay? All conductors and cables are identified by their markings. Okay, each conductor will tell you what type of insulation it is, what size of wire it is, okay, what gauge, or how many mils. Okay, we measure wires in American wire gauge from 40 up to 4/0. It's 4 zeros. And then from there it goes into the KC mil ratings. This guy, 350 KC mil. So it's above the American wire gauge. Okay? So on each wire, this one included, it will tell me what type of insulation is on here. Okay? How big a wire this is. By using that information, you should be able to identify where you cannot use this wire. Okay? Insulations have different applications. Some you can use in wet, some you can't. Some you can use in sunlight, some you can't. Okay? Understanding what those letters mean is keys to understanding what type of wire you need to be using. Okay? If you're running into it in an environment that could get wet, or there's moisture in the air most of the time, you don't want to run something that can't handle a wet condition. Okay? Because the insulation will fail, and you'll be left with exposed conductors. Okay? The Romex that you guys are using is rated for 90 degrees centigrade and inside use only. It cannot be used outside. Sunlight will dry out the sheath, it will crack, and it will fall off, and it will fail. Okay, so you cannot run your Romex outside. It will fail. My grandpa's house, he ran it from his house to his garage through the air to run his security light, and in about 2 years, when the wind would blow, you could see little chunks falling off because that sheath had dried out so much and just cracked and fallen off. Okay, so understanding the different labels on here is key. We can take a look at it. I'll kind of break down a few just to show you what they are. Okay, most of them will have a T. Okay. T talks about thermoplastic. Thermoplastic insulation. Okay. Thermoplastic insulation. There's two kinds. There's thermoplastic and there's thermoset. So you have thermoplastic and you have thermoset.
The common ones?
These are the only, well, not the only. Yes, the common ones. Let me fill that. So you have thermoplastic and thermoset. Each one has an advantage. Thermoset has a higher range, higher temp range. Thermoplastic, when it gets hot, it will melt, but it will reform. Okay, if you've ever burned like a milk jug in a fire, that plastic will melt and it'll just become like molten. Okay, that's the same thing with thermoplastic. When it gets hot, it will melt, but if it doesn't actually go anywhere, then it'll just reform where it's at. Okay, so that's kind of good and bad, because you can overheat it just a little bit, and you should be okay. Whereas thermoset, when it overheats and then cools off, it will crack. And then if it moves any, it will break. The insulation will break. When I'm talking about overheating a conductor, I'm talking about that insulation failing. I'm not talking about getting a conductor so hot that it melts down the copper part of the conductor. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the insulation failing, thus exposing us to exposed conductors. Okay? Then you get short circuits, you get phase-to-phase shorts, you get ground faults. Okay? So that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about conductors and passive. Okay?
With the thermoplastic, like you said, it can melt, but it'll reform. Wouldn't that cause like thinner spots in the?
It could. It could cause that.
If it's like against the corner, you know, in a stud or something.
Right, and it's never good to overheat a conductor. It's actually really bad to do that. That's why we're going to go through here and we're going to figure out what temperatures and how much current. There's a ratio that you can have between temperature and current to keep that insulation from failing. Yeah, that's the whole purpose of this chapter. That's why I wanted to get to this chapter instead of going over dwelling load calculations. So we have T or X, T, X or R. We have H or H. Okay. And that is a temperature rating. 1 H equals 75 degrees Celsius. 2 H's equals 90 degrees Celsius. Okay. So if we had THH wire, it has thermoplastic insulation and can be used in 9 degrees centigrade environment. Okay, so we're starting to build the characteristics of this insulation. So we've got what it's made out of, our heat range, and now we want to talk about our environment range. Okay. W equals wet. That's simple. Okay. You see a W, you can use it anywhere where water is present. Water will not adversely affect the insulation. Okay?
So if it's called TH, if it's got TH on it, that means it's thermoplastic insulation that can handle 75 degrees centigrade.
Okay. Like if we were talking about THW wire, we're talking about wire that can be made of a thermoplastic insulation, 75 degrees Celsius, and can be used in a wet environment. So what you would be doing is if you're running wires in Camoplast or Simmons, you'd say, okay, I'm going to run up in the rafters where I know it's hotter than down here on the ground. Okay, so I need a high heat conductor. Okay, sometimes water gets into the conduit somehow up above us. Okay, so I need something that can handle a wet environment. Okay. Then the last one that you'll see mostly is N for nylon. Okay. So what that says is on the outside of this wire, this one doesn't have it, but on the outside of this wire there'll be a thin sheet of nylon insulation. Okay. That's just to help seal it in.
Thin plastic, like a film.
Yeah.
Is it just like what's on our Romex?
Right, on your Romex. If you ever nick your Romex and I look at it and it looks like there's a little air bubble, what you've done is you just cut through that nylon sheet. Okay? You haven't gone, most of the time, you didn't go all the way through into the conductor. But that's what I see whenever I if I ever look at a conductor real closely, that's what I'm looking for, is I'll see that little bubble where you nick that nylon insulation. Okay, so that's all you're doing. So that gives you the basic. Most wire is THHN or THWN. Okay, those are your two main common types of single wire or conductor.
What's the actual purpose of the nylon coating on it?
Just to help seal it in. Helps give it that waterproof, because then the water is actually not even touching the insulation. Okay. Okay.